morning student, this is Krishna Chauhan from PN Institute. We would like to solve the MCQ portion from the yesterday chemistry paper. First of all, we will go with the question number 1, which is which amide gives propanamide by Hofmann-Bromamide reaction. In Hofmann-Bromamide reaction, we are using the reagent Br2 in presence of ethanolic NaOH. In this reaction, it is the one where the carbonyl group of the amide used to get eliminate from the respective amide. So first of all, we will make the amide diagram of each of the following. Ethanamide, you will have the structure of ethanamide like this. Same way, propanamide, butanamide will have and pentanamide, same way we will draw the diagram. So on the Hofmann-Bromamide reaction, we want to have the propanamine, in which you should have 3 carbon. So I want to say that butanamine will be the correct answer on reaction with the Hofmann-Bromamide reaction. It is going to give you the compound CH3CH2CH2NH2. So the correct answer is the option number C. We will go with the second question. What is the hydrolysis product? What is the hydrolysis product of lactose? Glucose and fructose are the hydrolysis product of your sucrose. Galactose and glucose are given by your lactose. Glucose and glucose are given by your maltose. And galactose and fructose are given by your raffinose. So the correct answer is your B. Lactose on hydrolysis is going to give you galactose and your glucose. All these are the dimers. These three are your dimers, whereas the glucose, galactose and fructose are your monomers. What's the next question? Which of the following acid is vitamin? So out of all them, the correct answer is your ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is the one which is present in your vitamin C. Vitamin C. And aspartic acid is a amino acid. The structure of the aspartic acid is somewhat like your NH2, CH, CH, COOH, CH2, COOH. This is the structure of your aspartic acid which is found in your amino acid. Moving towards the next question. Hydrogen bond is present in which 2 pair of bases in double helix structure of DNA? DNA is the one in which you are having 4 bases: adenine, thymine, guanine and your cytosine. Out of that you are having bonding between A, T, G and your C. That is the hydrogen bonding between adenine, thymine and guanine and your cytosine. There are 2 hydrogen bonding between your A and T and 3 hydrogen bondings are present between your G and C. So out of the correct option, out of all the 4, we can say adenine and thymine is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. In the question number 5, it is asked which is not optically active. For any molecule or atom to be optically active, it should have all the 4 atoms attached different. So in short, if I am having a carbon atom, all the 4 substituents which are attached to the carbon should be different for it to be optically active. There should be the 4 different groups should be present for any carbon atom to be optically active. In the question it is asked which of the following is not optically active. Not optically active means all the 4 substituents should not be same. Not be same. So out of the given option, glycine is the one which is not optically active. It is because the structure of glycine is This is the structure of your glycine, in which the carbon atom is attached with 2 hydrogen atoms. You can see here all the 4 groups are not different. Therefore, glycine is your correct answer because it is having all the 4. Out of the 4, it is having 2 substituents same, which are your hydrogen atoms. Moving towards the next question. Question number 6, which one is an example of the solid solution? For any mixture to be a solid solution, there should be a solute and a solvent. In the case of the solid solution, the solvent which is used should be in the solid phase. It should be in the solid phase. So out of all the 3, glucose dissolved in water. You can see water here is in the liquid state. So the solvent is a liquid state. In this camphor in nitrogen gas, the nitrogen gas which is the solvent is having the gaseous phase. In the case of the copper dissolved in gold here is your solid phase. And ethanol dissolved in water is also having a liquid phase. So out of all the 4 options, you can see the option number C is a solid solution. Why? Because in this the solvent part is your solid. So therefore we can say the solid solution is the one in which copper dissolved in gold is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay, in the question it is asked if 22 gram of benzene dissolved in 122 gram of carbon tetrachloride, calculate the mass percentage of benzene. We need to calculate the mass percentage of benzene. Mass percentage is being calculated by the formula amount of mass of your solute, whatever the solute is there, divide by the mass of solution. Mass of solution, multiply it by 100. This is the formula which we use for the calculation of the mass percentage. So according to the given question, the mass of the solute, that is the benzene, how much mass is given to you? 22 grams. So we will keep it in the formula 22 grams divide by mass of the solution. Mass of the solution is comprised of your CCl4 plus the mass of your benzene. So we will write to have the complete mass 122 plus 22. Multiply the entire with the 100. So in short we are going to get 22 multiply by 100, divide it by 144. On solving, we will get the answer 15.28%. So out of all the 4, the option B is your correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay. In the question number 8, it has been asked, we have 3 aqueous solution of NaCl labeled as A, B and C with concentrations 0.1 molar, 0.01 molar, 0.001 molar respectively. What is the Van't Hoff factor? They are asking what is the Van't Hoff factor. Van't Hoff factor is been symbolized by our I. For these solutions will be of the order. Okay, so in this we can see I is the dissociation, how much the given compound will dissociate. In the compound it is given NaCl. NaCl is an ionic compound, so which upon dissociation it is going to give you the complete ions of Na plus and Cl minus. So out of all the three you can see that if one of the NaCl molecule is getting ionized, it is going to give you one molecule of Na plus and one ion of your Cl minus. So all the three, so in all the three of them the salt NaCl is going to get completely ionized because it is a salt and it is a strong electrolyte. Whatever the strong electrolytes are there, they are getting completely ionized in the water. So because of which the NaCl in all the three respective concentration is going to get completely dissociated, and therefore the I factor for all the three concentration will remain the same. Therefore option C is the correct answer, because in all the three solutions A, B and C you are having respectively the NaCl solution only but with different concentration. So therefore we can say that option C is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay. In the question number 9, it is asked for 1 molar aqueous solution of glucose, which one is correct? Okay, in this you have to find out the del Tb. What is del Tb? Del Tb is the elevation in the boiling point, and Kb is your constant for the elevation point. We are having the general relationship of the del Tb with the Kb as your molality. Del Tb is equal to I Kb into molality. I is the Van't Hoff factor. Van't Hoff factor I means how much ions, number of ions given in solution. Given in solution. How much ions the solute will give in the solution is your I factor. As we know that glucose, it will not give you any kind of ion in the solution. Therefore, the value of I for glucose remains your 1. So I for your glucose will be your 1, multiply it by Kb, and the given molality. The molality is given in the question, that is your 1 molar solution. So we will keep molality as our 1. Del Tb is equal to, therefore we can write del Tb is equal to Kb. So out of the 4 options, option D is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Which is an example of ideal solution of the following? In the ideal solution, out of all the 4, the ideal solution will be given or shown by the benzene and toluene. Why? Because the bonding before and after mixing will be remain your same. AA upon mixing with the BB is going to give you the same kind of interaction between AB and AB molecule as it was before your addition of the solution. Whereas the ethanol in acetone, chloroform in acetone and water in ethanol, all the 3 of them shows you different kind of behavior. Water in ethanol is your azeotropic solution. Is an azeotropic kind of your solution. In this, the vapor as well as the liquid phase is having the same composition, are known as your azeotropic solution. Whereas the ethanol in acetone and chloroform with acetone, in this you are having negative and positive kind of your deviation. Moving towards the next question, question number 11. Okay. In this question, they are asking you about an unripe mango placed in a concentrated salt solution to prepare pickle shrinks because. Here it has been asked that whenever the mango is been placed in a salt solution, it is getting shrinking is because of the removal of water from the whatever the mango pieces are being present there. Whenever we are placing the mango in the salt solution, the solution which are having outside is of your salt solution. So the salt solution is there, and in the mango you are having the less concentration of the salt. So what will happen? The water molecules will move from the mango towards the salt solution, and this is all because of the loss of water due to osmosis, and because of which the mango which is placed in the salt solution is going to get shrink. So according to the question asked, the option D is the correct answer. And the movement of water is because of the concentration of salt. It is all because of the concentration of salt in mango and the salt solution, This is because of the difference in the concentration of salt in the mango as well as the given outside this salt solution. So option D is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay, an electrochemical cell can behave like an electrolytic cell when? Okay, whenever we want a electrochemical cell to convert it into our electrolytic cell, the potential which we are applying from the outside should be larger as compared to the E cell. Whenever the E cell is equal to your E external, the cell has reached your equilibrium. The cell is in your equilibrium position. At that time, no movement of current will be seen. Whereas in the case when the E cell is greater than your E external, it is working as your electrochemical cell. We are saying that it is working as our electrochemical cell. Whereas in the case of this one, option number C, electrolytic cell, it should have the E external greater than your E cell. Whereas the E cell is equals to E external, it has reached your equilibrium. So option C is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. The standard electrode potential for Daniell cell is 1.1. They are saying that they had given you E naught cell which is equal to your 1.1 volt. What will be the value of standard Gibbs free energy? They want you to find out the standard Gibbs free energy, which is your del G naught. There is a relation between your del G naught and your E naught cell, which is given by minus NF E naught cell, where E is the number of electron transfer, F is the Faraday. The value of Faraday is already given to you, 96487 coulomb per mole inverse. And your E naught cell is the standard electrode potential, which is given to you 1.1 volt. In this given reaction, we can see that the zinc is getting converted into Zn plus 2 by release of 2 electrons. Those 2 electrons are being taken up by your copper to give you Cu as your solid. So in this we can say that 2 electrons are being transferred. So the value of N will be equal to your 2. Faraday is given to you 96487 multiplied by the E cell, which is given to you 1.1 volt. Upon multiplication, you will get minus 212.27 kilojoule per mole. So out of all, the option B is your correct answer. Towards the question number 14, the quantity of charge required to obtain 2 mole of aluminium from Al2O3 is, okay, in the compound Al2O3, we are having the charge over aluminium as Al plus 3. So to settle down, we require 3 electrons to have 1 mole of aluminium. In short, if we want to deposit 1 mole of aluminum, we should have the mass of the 3 mole of Faraday. 1 mole is requiring 3 Faraday charge to have 1 mole of aluminum. In the question, they are asking you 2 moles of aluminum. 1 mole requires 3 Faraday, so 2 mole requires your 6 Faraday. Therefore, answer A is the correct option. Moving towards the next question. So we were at the question number 15. So in the question number 15, they are asking you, in the mercury cell, which of the following act as a cathode? So in the mercury cell, we know that in this, the paste of the zinc, in this, the paste, we are having the paste of the zinc, this mercury oxide and the carbon acts as your cathode, whereas the anode is been made by your zinc plate. That one zinc covering will be there, zinc metal covering will be there like this. In this you are having the outer covering, zinc, which is acting as an anode, whereas this carbon rod, this is acting as a cathode. We are having the carbon rod which is acting as your cathode, and you are having the filling of this. The filling has been made up of the ammonium chloride and that one, and plus here you are having the zinc of that mercury oxide, this one mercury oxide. So plus mercury oxide, they both combiningly acting as your cathode. Okay, next question. Okay, so we'll move towards the next question. For this, you have to calculate. Okay, in this question, in the question number 16, they are asking you about the del naught M. They are given the NaCl, HCl, NaAC, means they are giving you the molar conductivity at infinite dilution for the NaCl, HCl and sodium acetate. You have to calculate for the acetic acid. Okay, so whenever you want to calculate for this kind of a salt, for the acid, we have to make a summation and the subtraction. We have to make it organized equation for that. Okay, we have to calculate for the acetic acid. So what we will do, we will sum up the del naught M. First of all, we will sum up for the acetic acid. We have to calculate. So first of all, we will sum up them both of this, HCl plus del naught M for NaAC. Then we will subtract of the NaCl. Okay, keeping the values of the respective salt, we are using 425.9 plus, which will sum up 91. And out of that, we are going to subtract from the 126.4. On solving this, we will get the answer 390.5. So option number D is your correct answer. Moving towards the next question. What is the question? It is given to you. They are asking which Nernst equation is correct for the following cell. Okay, so to find out the Nernst equation for the following cell, what we have to do is, first of all, we have to make the cathode reaction, anodic reaction, then the entire cell reaction, and then only we will have the Nernst equation. Okay, so this is the anodic half. The first half is telling you about the anode, the second half is telling you about the cathode. This is a cathodic reaction. Okay, whatever the reaction is taking place at anode and another half at the cathode. Okay, so at anode I would like to write it like this. Aluminium is going to get converted into your Al plus 3 by releasing the 3 electrons, whereas at the cathode, which reaction will take place? The zinc Zn plus 2 is accepting the 2 electrons to make it as Zn solid. Okay, here the transfer of 3 electrons and here the transfer of 2 electrons. So to balance the number of electrons, we are going to multiply this by 2 I'm multiplying this reaction by 3. So the new reactions at the anode and cathode will be respectively, you are getting 2Al is going to give you 2Al plus 3 and plus 6 electrons will be liberated. Whereas in the cathode, what will happen? We are going to multiply the reaction by 3 Zn plus 2 plus 6 electrons is going to generate 3 Zn. The summative cell reaction will be your, what will be the cell reaction? We are going to have the exact cell reaction by cancelling and by adding the resultant Zal plus 3 and 3 Zn. So according to this cell reaction, we can make the Nernst equation. E cell will be equal to your E naught, which is equal to your cathode minus anode, which will be already given to you, minus 0.059 divided by n log. Then what we used to keep the product upon reactant. Product we are having Zn and aluminium. Zn coming in the solid, so its concentration remains the same. Same here, aluminium is in the solid phase, so its concentration remains the same. For this we are going to put the value Al plus 3 and the power over the concentration by 2. Divide by the concentration of the Zn plus 2 and the concentration Q. Okay, what is the value of N here? N is equal to number of electron transfer, 0.059 divided by how much electron transfer are there? There is 6 electron transfer, so we are going to keep N is equal to 6. Then log and keeping the values once again the same way, and the resultant answer will be your, and your resultant answer is E cell is equal to E naught. Just a minute. Okay, so this is the correct answer which matches with the, your correct answer is this one which matches up with the option number C. Okay, so this is the correct answer. Okay, question number 18, they are asking you, if the rate constant K is equal to 2.3 10 raised to minus 5 liter mole inverse second inverse, then identify the reaction order. Okay, there is one formula which has been used to determine the rate, or you can say order of any reaction. We used to find out by using the whatever the units are given in the K. If it is given liter mole inverse second inverse, then we can have the formula. In the section it is given rate is equal to K, concentration of whatever the thing is there, whatever the reactant is there, to the power N. This is the rate reaction for N order concentration. If we are having, rate can be written as your concentration divided by time, and multiplying this by concentration into power N. This can be written as, we can put the concentration on the denominator, concentration upon time and concentration to the power N is equal to K. So we can write concentration to the power 1 minus N divided by time is equal to K. Okay, concentration we can write here, concentration to the power 1 minus N, time is been written is in your second inverse is equal to K. Concentration can be written in your mole per second, it is your mole per liter, and 1 minus N second inverse is equal to your K. Here in the section it is given liter mole inverse. Liter is having plus 1, whereas mole is having minus 1. It is in the inverse. So if I am keeping my N is equal to 2, if I keep the value of N is equal to 2, I am going to get mole liter 1 minus 2 second inverse is equal to K. So my section will become mole liter inverse second inverse is equal to K, which upon solving it further we will get the value as liter mole inverse and second inverse. Therefore, it is our second order reaction. We can say that the value of N or the order of the reaction will be my second order reaction. Once again, I would like to explain you the same thing. Rate has been written K into concentration power N. N is the order of our reaction. Putting the values of the further rate can be described as concentration upon time, keeping the concentration in the denominator and solving it further. We will get K is equal to concentration 1 minus N second inverse. Concentration can be written as mole per liter power 1 minus N second inverse, which upon solving, and if I am keeping the value of N is equal to 2, if you are keeping the value of N is equal to 2 and solving, we will get liter mole inverse second inverse as our answer. So the second order reaction is there with the option C as the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay, question number 19. What is the slope of plot between ln k versus 1 upon t according to the Arrhenius equation? The Arrhenius has given an equation k is equals to a e raised to power minus ea upon rt. If I am taking the ln on both the side and solving it, ln k is equals to ln a minus ea upon rt. If you are keeping this in the formula as a y is equals to mx plus c, we can have a plot in which we can have a graph of y with the ln k versus our 1 upon t. 1 upon t. We will get the slope and the negative form minus ea upon r. We are having a negative slope which will be equal to, the value of slope will be equal to minus ea upon r, and the intersection point will be your ln a. So the question they are asking, what is the slope of the plot between ln k versus 1 upon t? According to the Arrhenius equation, we are going to get the answer minus ea upon r. So option B is your correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay, so we were at the question number 20. In the question number 20, it has been asked, a reaction is first order in A and second order in B. How many times the rate constant affected on increasing the concentration of B 3 times? Okay, as we know that rate constant is never been affected by change in the concentration of any of the reactant. Only the rate of the reaction is affected. There is difference between rate and rate constant. This is the rate constant which we are talking about. Whatever the reactant is there to the power n. This is the rate constant. The rate constant, it does not change with the change in the concentration. It remains constant. It remains constant. But as they are asking, so they might be asking regarding the rate of the reaction. So for the rate of the reaction, we will have the rate is equal to k a raised to power. What is the order of A? It is given first order. So we will keep it as 1. Whereas in the B, it has been given second order. So, according to the given information, if we are increasing the concentration of B 3 times, if you are increasing the concentration of 3 times, you will get second rate of the reaction. The rate 2 can be defined as K A to the power 1, and B, the concentration is increased 3 times. Upon solving this, we will get K A 9B square, which is equal to 9 KAB square. This is the older rate, or we can say rate 1. Therefore, we can say that the rate of the reaction, means the rate 2, is equal to 9 times the rate 1. So we can say that option A is the correct answer. 9 times the rate of the reaction is getting increased. Moving towards the next question. Okay, in the question number 21, it has been asked, which statement is true with respect to catalyst? Okay, catalysts are the one which are only involved in the reaction to provide their surface. They don't change their concentration with time. So in any reaction, what is the role of your catalyst? Here are the few options given regarding the catalyst. It increases the equilibrium constant. No, it does not change the equilibrium constant. The equilibrium constant remains constant with respect to the catalyst. Catalyst does not alter the equilibrium constant. It is having no effect on Kc. Second option is it increases the value of activation energy. No, it does not increases the activation energy. It decreases the activation energy. So second part is also your wrong. Third, it does not alter Gibbs energy. Yes, this is the correct answer. It does not alter the Gibbs energy. It is all because the Gibbs energy depends upon temperature. It depends on temperature and your value of Kc. As I have told you, it does not have any effect on the Kc and the catalyst even does not have any effect on the temperature. So in short, we can say that catalyst does not alter neither the Gibbs free energy, neither it alters the equilibrium constant. So option C is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay, question number 22 is there. Which of the relation is correct for zero order reaction? First of all, we will write the equation for the zero order reaction. We know that T is equals to R naught minus R upon K is the reaction for your first order reaction, where R naught is your initial concentration, R is the amount of concentration remaining after the time T, and K is your equilibrium constant. The reaction they are asking with the T half. In this, they want to know the relation of the T half with the R naught. So when the reaction is having T is equal to T half, means half of the reaction is being completed. At that time, the remaining concentration R will be equal to, we can say R is equal to R naught by 2. This happens when time is equal to T half. When the reaction is half completed, the concentration, remaining concentration will be equal to the half of the initial concentration. So we can keep the values of the R and R naught in the reaction, and upon solving this, you will get R naught by 2K is equal to T half. So what can I say is T half is directly proportional to your R naught. So according to this, we can say that the option D is your correct answer, in which it is given that the T half, that is the first order, that is for the zero order reaction, the T half will be directly proportional to your R naught. Moving towards the next question. Okay, in the question number 23, they are asking you what is the magnetic moment of divalent ion in aqueous solution. Divalent means the ion is having +2 charge of its atomic number 28. We are having atomic number 28 as our nickel. Nickel is the one which is having 28 our atomic number. In this we are writing the configuration argon 18, 3D8 and 4s2. They are asking you to make a divalent, so Ni plus 2. We will have the configuration argon 18 and 3D8, 4s0. According to this, if we make the electronic configuration of 3D, we will have the electron distribution in a manner we can see that there are two unpaired electrons. In the electronic configuration, you can see that two unpaired electrons are there. So these two unpaired electrons will participate in the magnetic movement, in producing the magnetic movement for the ion. We are having the formula for the magnetic movement. We used to have root n into n plus 2 Bohr magneton. N is the number of unpaired electrons. So in this you can see there are two unpaired electrons. Putting the value in the equation and upon solving, we will get the answer 2.84 Bohr magneton. So the option A is the correct answer. Once again I am repeating, magnetic movement you have to calculate for a divalent ion in aqueous, which is having the atomic number 28. 28 as the atomic number of our nickel element, for which if we are writing the configuration and putting plus 2 means we are removing the 4s2 electrons, and upon putting the electronic configuration, here we can see two unpaired electrons are there. So these two unpaired electrons will participate in contributing the magnetic movement. So in short, we are having the magnetic moment 2.84 Bohr magneton. Moving towards the next question. Out of the given elements, which transition element does not exhibit variable oxidation state? Okay. So there are four elements given, out of which the element which does not give you the variable oxidation state. Variable oxidation state means they want to say that there should be more than one oxidation state, but here they are asking not more than one oxidation state. So there should be only one oxidation state. Nickel is having lot many oxidation state, from +2 to many +4, +6 are also there. In copper also we are having cuprous and cupric, +1, +2. Same way chromium is having your +3. You are having Cr having +3 oxidation state, +3, +4. There are many more others. Chromium is having +4, many different oxidation state. Scandium is the only one which is having one oxidation state of +3. Cs +3 is the only one oxidation state which is there with the scandium. So our correct answer is your option number D. Scandium, it does not show you variable oxidation state. It is having only one oxidation state, which is your scandium. Moving towards the next question. What is the formula of your manganate ion? They are asking you about the manganate ion. What is the formula of a manganate ion? Manganate ion is having MnO4 minus 2. It is having MnO4 minus 2. KMnO4 minus, you are having KMnO4, which can even be written as MnO4 minus, which is for your permanganate. You are having permanganate ion. So this is for the permanganate and this is for the manganate ion. Moving towards the next question. Okay, when an acidic K2Cr2O7 solution is added to Sn+2 salt, then Sn+2 changes to, okay, in this solution K2Cr2O7, it is working as an oxidizing agent. This is working as an oxidizing agent. So what is the role of the oxidizing agent? It will oxidize whatever the ions are there towards its higher oxidation state. So Sn in this ground state, it is having +2. It will be oxidized to Sn+4 in its higher oxidation state. So we can say that Sn is going to get converted or changes to Sn+4 in the acidic medium in presence of the acidified K2Cr2O7. Moving towards the next question. Primary and secondary valency. Question number 27. Primary and secondary valency of CO in the complex compound COEN thrice Cl3 is respectively. In this, if you make the complex according to Werner, we know it has given you two kind of valency, primary valency and secondary valency. Secondary valency are your non-ionizable. They are your non-ionizable valency. they does not give you ions in the solution. So whatever the number of ligands are there, in the complex, number of ligands in the complex will give you the information regarding the secondary valency. In the complex which is given to us is CO, En thrice, Cl3. Here in this complex, okay, here in this complex it is given to us that you are having tris En. So the complex will look like somewhat. We are going to have En and En with the charge plus 3 over it. So there are 6 bonds which have been formed by the 3 En. So secondary valency is your 6. Number of bonds it can form is your 6. Whereas the number of ions, what is the primary valency? Primary valency is defined as the ionizable valency. This is your ionizable valency. So number of ions it can give with the counter ion is your 3 chloride. You can say 3Cl minus is been given in the solution. So we can say that this is the primary valency. This is the primary valency, and the number of whatever the ligands are getting coordinated with the metal is giving you about its secondary valency. So according to this, the correct option is your A. A is the correct option, in which the primary valency is your 3 and the secondary valency is your 6. Moving towards the next question. Okay, in the question number 28, they had given you 2 complexes. One is your pentamine chlorido cobaltate sulfate, and the another cobalt sulfate, and this one same, but the counter ion is your chloride. If you are having these 2 complexes in the water, if we are dissolving this in the water, the respective ions they will give is CO, NH3, the complex CO, NH3, Cl, SO4 is going to give you 2 ions. This is going to generate first ion with the complex and SO4 minus 2. This is the second ion which it is going to give. Second compound is there CO, NH3 5, and in this sulfate is given in the coordinated compound and Cl. So the ions it is going to give you CO, NH3 5, SO4 minus and plus and Cl minus. Okay, this kind of ions will be liberated in the water. Here you can see. Okay, here you can see that the counter ions which are given by the complexes are the sulfate and the chloride. These both the ions are going to give their respective precipitate by adding the different reagent. If I am adding barium chloride sulfate solution in this complex, it is going to give me the white precipitate of barium sulfate. Whereas if I am adding the solution of silver nitrate AgNO3 in this solution, I am going to get the white precipitate of my AgCl. So what is there? These 2 isomers are having the same structures, but they give you different ions in the solution, and that is why these are known as the ionization isomers. Why they are called ionization isomers? Because they are giving you different ions in the solution. In first complex this is giving you sulfate ion, whereas in the another complex it is giving you chloride ion. Moving towards the next question. Okay, in the question number 29, they are asking you how many number of unpaired electrons are there in the complex NiCN4 minus 2. Okay, this is a coordinated complex. Okay, in the coordinated complex, they are asking you about the NiCN4 minus 2. First of all, we will find out the charge in the nickel. Nickel is having the atomic number 28. Electronic configuration will be your Ar, argon 18, 3d8, 4s2. On solving this, we are going to get the charge over the nickel as plus 2. What is the charge over nickel? Plus 2. So Ni plus 2 will have the electronic configuration Ar, 18, 3d8, 4s0. Now the ligand Cn minus. We know that Cn minus is a strong ligand. We know the role of the strong ligand. They used to have the property of pairing of the unpaired, or they are having the property of pairing of the single electrons. So in this, if we are making the d orbitals, if you are making the electronic configuration of d orbital, this is the electronic configuration with the 3d in the Ni plus 2 state. Now when the Cn minus strong ligand is there, so what it will do? It will pair up with both the electrons and it will make the structure or the electronic configuration in this way. So no unpaired electrons will be there, and it will be followed up by the hybridization in which you are having 4 ligands, so it is going to get this kind of hybridization DsP2. So this complex, in short I want to say, if you are having complex NiCN4 minus 2, the hybridization it is showing is your DsP2 kind of hybridization, which is your square planar. This is a square planar, and it is having how many number of unpaired electrons? There are 0 unpaired electrons present in this. So option D is your correct answer. These 8 electrons are being given up by the Cn minus, which is the ligand present in the complex. We know that each ligand donates 2 electrons. Moving towards the next question. Question number 30. Okay, in the question there it is asked, which of the following is an ambidentate ligand? What is the meaning of ambidentate ligand? Ambidentate ligands are those ligands which are having 2 atoms to bind with the central metal. They are having 2 atoms that can bind with the central metal atom or central metal ion. So there should be 2 or more than 2 are known as the ambidentate ligand. In the case of the oxalate, this is the oxalate, we are writing this as OX or CH2C2O4. In this we know only the oxalate are the one, we are having this one. In this only O, oxygen is the one which used to bind with the metal atom. Here in this we are having sulfur as well as the nitrogen. In the thiocyanide there are 2 atoms, sulfur as well as nitrogen, which can bind with the central metal, and therefore the option B is your correct answer. In the case of the water, we have seen that the water lone pair of electrons are present with the oxygen, which used to donate to the metal to form the bond. In case of EDTA also, it is a hexadentate ligand. This is your hexadentate ligand. This is a hexadentate ligand, but it is not your ambidentate ligand. Okay, so ambidentate ligands are the one which are having 2 atoms that can bind with the central atom or the ion. In this, sulfur and the nitrogen, in this thiocyanide, sulfur and nitrogen can bind with the metal in the form of the, suppose we are taking the example SCN, number of electrons like this with the metal, whereas it can even form NCS with the metal. This sense and this way. These are the 2 different ways in which SCN can bind with the metal atom. Moving towards the next question. Okay. In the question number 31, they are asking you which is the most stable complex. Okay, out of all the 4 given options, we can see that the ammonia, water and the chloride, all the 3 of them are your monodentate ligand. They are your monodentate. They are a monodentate ligand. Monodentate ligands are the one where only single, or you can say that they are having only single linkage with the metal atom. Whereas this one, oxalate, C2O4 minus 2, they are the one which are having chelate effect. They can form ring. They are having chelate effect. In short, if I am making the complex diagram, we are making it somewhat like this, the oxalate. In this you can see that it is a bidentate ligand. It is your bidentate ligand. The oxalate is your bidentate ligand. So it is binding with the metal atom from the 2 sides. From the 2 atoms it is getting binded. So in this way it is forming a chelate or a ring kind of structure around the metal atom, and because of which the chelate effect is there, and this effect is the one which is responsible for the stability of the complex. So option C is the correct answer. Whereas the another 3, amine, aqua and the chlorido, they all are the one which are your monodentate. They are not having any chelate kind of effect over the central atom. Moving towards the next question. Okay, the question number 32, they are asking you predict the order of reactivity of the following compound in SN1 reaction. They are asking about SN1 reaction. The SN1 reaction is following the stability of your carbocation. This is following up the Cb plus stability. They are following the stability of your carbocation. And we know that the stability of the carbocation is having the order of 3 degree carbocation being the most stable, then 2 degree carbocation, and at last 1 degree carbocation. So out of all the given 3 options, we can see the option number 3, this one, you are having CH3, CH3, CH3. If we are removing the Br, it is going to generate 3 degree carbocation, which is most stable. Then the second, or you can say 2 degree carbocation, is being generated by the first option. First option we are having CH3, CH2, CH, then CH3 plus. This is a 2 degree carbocation. This is a 3 degree carbocation, and at last the one which is least stable is the 1 degree carbocation. We are having the structure CH2 plus. So the 1 degree carbocation. So from the given information we can say that option number 1 is your correct answer. Means option A is your correct answer. 3, 1 and your 2. This is your order of stability. So option A is the correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay, in the question it is asked which reagent is not used in Schwarz reaction. Schwarz reaction is the one in which we are using this reaction to add the fluorine. This is used to add the fluorine to the compound. This is also one of the reaction from the halogen exchange. Halogen exchange is being seen in this kind of reaction. But the condition for the Schwarz reaction, there is a condition for Schwarz reaction in which it is written that there should be metal fluoride. The reaction should happen only with metal fluorides only. There should be metal fluoride. We can say SbF3, yes, this is a metal fluoride. AgF, silver fluoride, yes, this is also a metal fluoride. HF, no, this is not a metal fluoride. It is your fluoric acid, hydrogen fluoric acid. This is an acid. What is this? This is an acid. This is not a metal fluoride, whereas cobalt fluoride, this is also your one option. So we can say which is not used in Schwarz reaction, the one which is not a metal fluoride. So option C is the correct answer. Okay, in the Schwarz reaction, this is also one of the halogen exchange reaction in which we are using the metal fluorides to exchange with the fluorine atoms. And out of this, the option C is the one which is an acid, and it cannot be used as your reagent for the Schwarz reaction. Moving towards the next question. Okay, so let's go to the next question. Question number 34. What is the major product Z in the following reaction? Okay, we can see here that in the reagent which has been given here, it is Br2 in presence of sunlight. In presence of sunlight, the Br is undergoing your free radical mechanism. It is going to produce 2 Br free radical. This is following up which kind of mechanism? This is going to follow free radical mechanism. So in the case of the free radical mechanism, we know that it is following the same stability as the carbocation stability. In free radical also we are having 3 degree free radical, most stable, then 2 degree free radical, and then at last the 1 degree free radical. And in this also, in the free radical mechanism, it is going to substitute only and only in the alkyl chain. It is not going to do any kind of substitution with the aryl chain. No substitution is possible in the aryl chain. So out of all the given products or out of all the given options, we can see that option number D and B. In the option number B and D, they are doing the substitution. In the option number B and D, they are doing the substitution in the alkyl chain. Here you can see it is given in the alkyl chain. Same way in this also they are giving you the stability in the alkyl chain. Okay, but in the option number B, what is there? This is you are having 1 degree free radical. Whereas in this you are having 2 degree free radical. This is also giving you 2 degree free radical. We will write it properly. This is your 2 degree, or we can say benzylic free radical. This is your 2 degree free radical, or we can say this is your benzylic free radical. Okay, so on benzylic free radical. So because of the more stability as compared to the first one, it is having more stability, and that is why option D is your correct answer. Moving towards the next question. What is the next question is there? Okay, name the following compound according to IUPAC name. Okay, according to the IUPAC name, you have to name this compound. We will rewrite or we will redraw the given compound. Okay. What is the compound given to you? You are having CH3, CH, one methyl group is there, then CH2, then in the third carbon you are giving CH, OH, then CH, in this you are having substitution CH2, OH, and at last you are having CH3. Okay, so this is the structure of the given compound. Fine. According to IUPAC, what we have to do is we have to select the carbon atoms containing the functional group. We can say that OH and OH, these two OH are the functional group. So the carbon containing the functional group, these are the two carbons. We can see that these are the two carbons, carbon 1 and carbon 2. These two are attached with the functional group. So while numbering the IUPAC name, we have to take these two carbon in the longest chain. So according to that, we will decide the longest chain. This will be the longest chain containing the carbon of the functional group. According to this, you can see that how many carbons are there. This is given 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6. So it will be a hexane. So out of the given, okay, we can say that the parent chain will be having hexane. Hexane will be there, and the substituents are there. What are the substituents? Methyl and methyl. So in this, now substituents are at second and fifth. 2,5-dimethyl here. The option number C. We can say that the option number C is the correct answer. Why? Because it is having substituent at the location 2 and 5. We can write 2,5-dimethyl hexane and 1 and 3-diol. So correct answer is your option number C. Moving towards the next question. Okay. Write the structure of the product of the following reaction. In this also we have to write the product, but first of all we will put our main interest in the reagent. What is the reagent? Sodium borohydride. So in this one, NaBH4 is the one which is always used to reduce the only selective functional group. It used to reduce your ketone, it reduces your aldehyde, then it even reduces your acyl chloride, and the last group it used to reduce is your anhydride. So in this compound we are having this group. This is your ketone group which will be reduced by the NaBH4, and this group, this is your ester group. This ester group, it will be not reduced by your NaBH4. On the reduction of the ketone, it is going to generate your 2-degree alcohol. What it will generate? It is going to generate your 2-degree alcohol on reduction, and this group will remain the same. So out of all the given options, we can see that the reduction of the ketone is been done in the option number 2, and the same thing remains here. Here we can see that the ketone is getting reduced. We can see in this that the ketone is getting reduced to the 2-degree alcohol and ester remains the same. So option B is your correct answer. We can say option B is the correct answer, as NaBH4 can only reduce selective functional group aldehyde, ketone, acyl chloride and your anhydride. It does not reduce your ester. Okay, moving towards the next question. Okay, in the next question they are asking you something regarding the sigma and pi bonds of the aspirin respectively. First of all, we will see how the aspirin is been formed. As we have seen that the aspirin can be prepared from the treatment with the acetic anhydride. This has been treated with your acetic anhydride, and then it forms a compound which is known as your aspirin. We are having the complete structure of the aspirin like this: COCH3. Aspirin is prepared by the acetylation of the compound. Okay, now we have to count out the number of sigma and pi bonds. How many sigma and pi bonds are there? Okay, from the figure we can see that how many pi bonds are there? 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So total 5 pi bonds are there. We are having pi bonds in the 5 with the two options, option A and option number D. So we have to count out the number of sigma bonds. How many sigma bonds are there? We will even keep the sigma bond of the hydrogen like this. On calculating, there are 6 sigma bond with the benzene ring, 7, 8, 9, 10. This is the 11. We can say how many? 11 and 1. Okay, 11, 12, 13, between them one will be there, 14, this is the 15 one, then 16, 17, 18, and then 3 another. You are having 3 hydrogen bonds, so 18 plus 3, you are having 21. So the correct answer is answer is your D. You are having 21 sigma bonds and 5 pi bonds. Okay, moving towards the next question. Okay, in the question number 38, it has been asked which is the final product of Riemann-Tiemann reaction. Okay, so in this the answer will be your salicylaldehyde. In the reaction of the Riemann-Tiemann, what is the reaction? In the Riemann-Tiemann reaction, this we are following with the phenol. It is being treated with the chloroform in presence of base NaOH. It is forming the compound which is your CHCl2, and this is somewhere your intermediate, and which upon further hydrolysis it is going to give you the compound with CHO, which is your salicylaldehyde. So correct answer is your option number C. This is the reaction and this is the chloroform in presence of NaOH. Okay. Moving towards the next question. Riemann-Tiemann was your one of the name reaction. Okay. Now question number 39. Predict the products X and Y of the following reaction respectively. Okay. This seems to be your which functional group? This is your ether. You are having ROR dash. This has been treated with the HI. Any halo acids it has been reacted. Okay, depending upon the substituents which are present, depending upon the R group, you are having two different kind of cleavage with the breaking of the oxygen. So here the compound is given, you are having trimethyl, you are having 3-methyl attached with the carbon and the C2H5. Here there is the reaction with the hydrogen iodide, as this is a tertiary carbon. This is your tertiary carbon. So breakdown of the bond take place here between this carbon and oxygen, according to which you will have the I getting attached with the tertiary carbon and H will attach with the oxygen, and the product which will be formed will be your I and C2H5OH. So according to this, the option D is your correct answer. You will having the product 1,1-dimethyl ethane iodide, and plus you are having the ethanol as your product. Moving towards the next question. Which reagent is used in preparation of benzene to benzaldehyde by Gattermann-Koch reaction? Okay, in the Gattermann-Koch reaction, what is the Gattermann-Koch reaction? We are reacting our benzene with our, which is the reagent they are using? They are using CO plus HCl. In presence of the catalyst, we are using anhydrous AlCl3, and this generates your benzaldehyde. You are going to have CHO. Benzaldehyde has been prepared. So reagents what we are using? CO, HCl and anhydrous AlCl3. So option B is the correct answer. This is also one of the name reaction from the contact. Okay. Next, moving to the next question. Cannizzaro reaction is not given by. Okay. What they are asking you is regarding the Cannizzaro reaction. Which compounds give you Cannizzaro reaction? The compounds which are not having alpha hydrogen. Only those compound can give you Cannizzaro reaction. Alpha hydrogen should be absent. Okay. So in this compound, those compound can only give the Cannizzaro reaction. In this question they are asking which is not given. So out of the four options, the one which is having alpha hydrogen will not give you the Cannizzaro reaction. In this also you can see this is attached with the carbon which is not having any alpha hydrogen. In this also the aldehyde group is attached with this carbon, and this is also not having any alpha hydrogen. And this is the methanol, and methanol is the one which does not have any alpha hydrogen. So all the three of them, they are giving you positive, or they will give you the Cannizzaro reaction. They are the one which will give you the product with the Cannizzaro reaction. Whereas in this, the aldehyde group is attached with the carbon which is having 3 alpha hydrogens. 3 alpha hydrogens are present there. So this is the one which is not going to give you the Cannizzaro reaction, but it is going to give you aldol condensation. This compound is going to give you aldol condensation. So correct answer is your option number D. Let's move to the next question. Okay, which product is obtained when cyclopentane react with hydroxyl amine in acidic medium? They are asking you to have a reaction of the cyclopentane. First of all, we will draw the cyclopentane like this. This is the cyclopentane. It has been reacted with the hydroxyl amine NH2OH. This is the hydroxyl amine. On reaction of this, in presence of the acidic medium, there will be the removal of water molecule. We are going to remove the water molecule in this reaction. You can see that the H2 of the hydroxide and the O2 from the ketone will be removed as water, and the remaining compound will be added up, and you will have the formation of the product somewhat like this, and this is known as oxime. The compound which is formed is known as your oxime. This is a cyclopentane oxime. This is a cyclopentane oxime. Okay, so the product is with a removal of the water molecule. This is basically by the removal of the water molecule formed between the oxime molecule. Moving towards the next question. Which of the following compound gives iodoform reaction? Okay, so for any compound to give iodoform reaction, there are some conditions which should be fulfilled by the given compounds. Iodoform reaction are given by the compounds which are having CH3CO kind of group. This is known as your methyl ketone. These are known as your methyl ketone. This compound, or there should be 2-degree alcohol. 2-degree alcohol also gives you 2-degree alcohols also gives you positive iodoform reaction, and out of the 1-degree alcohol only we are having one exceptional case, that is our ethanol. Ethanol is the one which, even being a 1-degree alcohol, it do gives us your iodoform reaction. So first of all, what we will do, we will try to have the structure of all the 4 of them, and then we will see whether it is having 2-degree alcohol or whether it is having methyl ketone present in this. First of all, acetone. Acetone is having the formula of this type, pent3-on. In this, the structure is pentane, pent3-on, then propanal with pro-al. This is the diagram of propanal, and then benzophenol. We are having the diagram of benzophenol, structure of benzophenol like this. Out of all the 4 given options, you can see that this group methyl ketone is present in your acetone, whereas that kind of group is not being seen in any other kind of the given option. So option A is your correct answer, as it is containing your methyl ketone group. Okay, so moving towards the next question. Okay, in this question they are asking you about which of the following compound has highest Ka value. Ka, they are asking about the acidity of the given compounds. The most acidic, they want the highest one, so they are looking for the most acidic compound. Which is the most acidic compound? Okay, so here we know that to make any of the acid a strong acid, we should have electron withdrawing group. Electron withdrawing groups attached to it. Electron withdrawing groups should be attached with the acid. We can see here that nitro, chloro and bromo, these three are the one which are electron withdrawing group, but their number also depend. How many number of groups are present? How many such electron withdrawing groups are present in the compound? This is the one in which there is no electron withdrawing group, so this is the least acidic one. We place the acetic acid as the least acidic one. Then next we are having nitro, bromo and chloro. Out of this we can see only one bromo is there. So next to after the acetic acid, a bit more acidic is your bromoacetic acid. Bromoacetic acid is having a bit more acidity because of the presence of the Br, which is an electron withdrawing group. So what it will do, it will try to have the electron towards itself. It will withdraw the electron towards itself, which is making the acid more easier to donate H plus in the ion. Next after this we are having nitro, NO2. NO2 is also one of the strong electron withdrawing group. And the last, which is the most acidic, is your trichloroethanoic acid. You are having 3 chlorides present in this because of the number. More the number of the groups attached, more is the electron withdrawing property, and more acidic it will create the compound. So option B is your correct answer. Moving towards the next question. Okay. In the question number 45, they are asking you regarding which product is obtained on heating sodium acetate with soda lime. First of all, we will frame out the question. Sodium acetate. You are having the formula of sodium acetate like this. It is being treated with the soda lime. Soda lime is a mixture of your NaOH and calcium oxide in the ratio of your 3:1. This is the reagent soda lime. It is being used in the removal of your CO2. What it helps in? The removal of your CO2. Okay, so the final product of this reaction will be your CH4 plus Na2CO3. Whatever the carbon is been removed by using this reagent will be taken up by the sodium to form the respective salt of the sodium carbonate, and we are getting the main compound as our methane. So we can have the option D as our correct answer, in which the sodium acetate, this is the sodium acetate which has been reacted with the soda lime. Soda lime is your mixture. It is your 3:1 mixture of your NaOH and calcium oxide. Okay, which helps in the removal of the decarboxylation. This is the removal of CO2, or we can say decarboxylation of the whatever the acid is given. Acid are undergoing decarboxylation. Moving towards the next question. Which of the following gives carbylamine test? Okay. There are some conditions for any compound to fulfill its requirement to give carbylamine test. Carbylamine tests are given only by aliphatic and aromatic primary amine. You should have aliphatic or aromatic. You can use aliphatic as well as aromatic, but the condition is it should be primary amine. It should be primary amine. So we will have the diagram of all the 4 options and we will check out which of that is the primary amine. Methylamine, the formula is CH3NH2. Next is the ethanamine, CH3 C double bond ONH2. Then isopropylamine, we will have the formula of isopropylamine this one, and the last triethylamine. You are having trimethylamine. The structure of trimethylamine is your this kind of structure. Out of all the 4 options, we can check. This is the diagram of this one, this is this, and the last one given here. Okay, out of all the 4 options, we can see that the option 1, methylamine, is the only one which is your primary amine, or we can say 1 degree amine. Okay, amide, they are not giving any kind of carbalamine test. This is the one which is a 2 degree amine, which is not going to give you positive carbalamine test, and this is a 3 degree amine, which is also not going to give you positive test for your carbalamine test. So option A is your correct answer. Okay, going towards the next question. Which reagent is used to distinguish between secondary and primary amines? Secondary and primary amines can be easily distinguished by using the reagent Hinsberg reagent. Hinsberg reagent is the one which is used to distinguish between secondary and tertiary amine. Okay, what is the Hinsberg reagent? This is known as your benzene sulfonyl chloride. You are having the formula of Hinsberg reagent, benzene sulfonyl chloride. This chloride is going to react with the hydrogen present in the amine. Suppose if we are taking a primary amine, any primary amine has been taken. Okay, we are taking a primary amine, RNH2. This reagent is going to react with one of the hydrogen present in the primary amine, and then it will form the compound with the amine, which is your S double bond O and your benzene. The same kind of reaction of this benzene sulfonyl chloride can be given by your 2 degree amine. This one. Why? Because one hydrogen is still present in this. The hydrogen of the 2nd degree amine is going to react with the chloride of the benzyl sulfonyl chloride to give you the addition product. Your addition product will be NR2. But in case of the tertiary R3N, there is no hydrogen present with the amine, and therefore it is not going to give you any kind of product. So we can say that Hinsberg reagent is the only one which can be used to distinguish between the secondary and tertiary amine. Moving towards the next question. Okay, so we were at the question number 48. Which order for solubility in water of the following compound is correct? They are asking you about the solubility in the water. First of all, we will see what are the substituents they are given. Okay, in the amine, this is your ethylamine, this is your diethylamine, and this is your benzylamine. Okay, in the case of the benzylamine, we can see that benzylamine is completely insoluble in water. This is completely insoluble in water. Therefore, we can say that it will be the least soluble in the water. So, according to this, we can say that this will be the least one. So, in the option number C and in option number D, you can see that they both have been placed in the least one. After the two, then the ethyl and the diethyl, you are having two amines present in this, ethylamine and diethylamine. One thing is there, more the alkyl group, more the alkyl group attached with the amine, lesser is the solubility. Lesser is the solubility. how the solubility will be affected? Solubility is inversely proportional to number of alkyl group. In this we can see in the diethyl you are having two ethyl groups are there. So the more the alkyl groups, lesser is the solubility. Solubility is going to get decreased. So in this way we can say that this one, more is the alkyl group, lesser is the solubility, and in this one you are having only one alkyl group, so more is the solubility. So according to this, option D is the correct answer. In this only one ethyl group is there, one ethyl group. Here you are having two ethyl group, and this one being a bulkier group, or you can say steric group, bulkier group, steric hindrance will be there, and therefore it will be less soluble in your water. Okay, so moving towards the next question, question number 49, which is the give IUPAC name of the product due to acetylation of aniline. So first of all we will draw the diagram of the aniline and then followed by the acetylation of our aniline. Aniline is the group in which NH2 is attached to your benzene ring. Okay, and then we are doing the acetylation, so we are going to add acetic anhydride to it in presence of the acid. Okay, so what will be the reaction product in this? You are going to remove the acetic acid, will be a byproduct, CH3COOH will be our byproduct, and the addition product will be something this is the one in which you are having the compound form. Okay, we can see CON. When this group is there, when this kind of group is there, this is your amide. Which group is there? If we are having a group C double bond O NH2, this is our amide group. So the IUPAC name will follow the amide functional group. Okay, so in this the carbon atom is attached with the another methyl group, so the parent chain will be this one. This is going to constitute your parent chain. Here I want to tell you that this is going to constitute the parent chain. How many carbons are there? 2. So we will use ethyne. Okay, we are going to use this ethanamide. We are going to use the ethanamide, and you can see that the phenyl group which is added here, this attached phenyl group is attached with the nitrogen which is acting as a substituent. Okay, this is the principal functional group, amide, and in this we are doing the substitution of the amine by removing the hydrogen and adding up the phenyl group. So what we are adding? We are having N-phenylethanamide. Okay, so longest chain of the carbon containing the functional group is your 1 and 2. This is your 1 and 2. So we are going to write ethanamide, and phenyl is here working as your substituent in the nitrogen. So we are going to add N-phenylethanamide as our IUPAC name. So the correct answer for the question is your 49 is your A. N-phenylethanamide is the correct answer. Okay, moving towards the last question of the MCQ portion. What product is not obtained by Saint-Mayer reaction? Okay, so Saint-Mayer reaction, in the Saint-Mayer reaction we have seen that your aniline is being treated with your Na, NO2 in presence of HCl, maintaining the temperature 0 to 5 degree Celsius. We are going to get BDC, benzene diazonium chloride. This BDC on treatment with the copper chloride salt, or by treating it with the copper bromide salt, or by using it in the form of the CuCN, we we are going to get the respective compounds of the chlorobenzene, we are going to get cyanobenzene, and we can even get the bromobenzene. But the iodobenzene, it cannot be formed by the help of the Sandmeyer reaction. Therefore, which product is not obtained by Sandmeyer reaction? Iodobromine, because we are not having any reagent to react it with the BDC. In the BDC, with the copper chloride, with the copper bromide and the copper cyanide, we are having the bromobenzene, chlorobenzene and the cyanobenzene. That's all. We are having all the 50 MCQs of the part A. Hello students, once again we are back to you with the numerical section of the part B of the question paper. Okay, so in this session we are just going to solve few of the numerical questions from the part number B. Okay, so in this paper the first numerical is the question number 2. In question number 2, the question is initial concentration of N2O5 in the following first order reaction. You are been given a first order reaction in which the reaction is already given to you was this one. Okay, they are giving you the initial concentration of N2O5 and the final concentration of N2O5 after 60 minutes. You have to calculate the rate constant of the reaction. So first of all we will write the reaction of your first order. Fine. What is the rate constant? We will define the rate reaction. Rate is equal to, you are writing here 2.303 upon T log R naught by R. We are writing it as K 2.303 rate constant. We have to find out the rate constant. We are writing that divided by T log R naught by R, where R naught is the initial concentration and R is the final concentration after 60 minutes. Putting the value 2.303 divided by time, it has been taken how much? 60 minutes log initial concentration. What is the initial concentration? This is the initial concentration, 1.24 10 raised to power minus 2 divided by 0.20 into 10 raised to power minus 2. Upon solving this, minus 2 is going to get cancelled. You are having 124 divided by 20, keeping the log of that, log, and 2.303 by 60. Okay, on solving this we are going to get 0.0304 minute inverse. So the value of K, so the value of K is 0.304 minute inverse. Okay, moving to the next question. Next numerical question in this is this one. Question number 14. Question number 14 is there. Okay, in this question what you have to calculate, this is another Nernst equation in which you have to calculate, the EMF of the cell. Okay, through the cell equation we can see that you are given this side. This first half is your anode and the second half is your cathode. So we will first of all write the reaction at the anode. What reaction is taking place at the anode? You are having hydrogen is going to give H plus and 2 electrons are being released. This is the reaction which is taking place at the anode. Then the reaction at the cathode will be given to you. Okay, in the reaction of the cathode what is there? You are having Br2 and Br minus. Fine. Okay, so the reaction for this one will be your Br2 is taking up the 2 electrons to convert itself into 2 Br minus. So this is the reaction at cathode and this is the reaction at your anode. We would like to have the complete resultant cell reaction. Cell reaction will be equal to H2 is combining with your Br2 to give you 2H plus and 2 Br minus. This is the cell reaction. Following with the cell reaction, we will have the Nernst equation. What is the Nernst equation? We are using Nernst equation. E cell is equal to E naught minus 0.059 divided by n log whatever the product is there. What is the product? We are having hydrogen ion, square of the hydrogen ion concentration multiplied by the square of the Br minus ion concentration. Divide by the pressure of hydrogen gas multiplied by the pressure of your bromine gas. We are having the pressure of Br2 gas. Okay. In the question, you can easily see already the pressure are given here 1 and 1. Okay, pressure of Br2 liquid is not here. Also, you are given the concentration of Br2, but it is already written in the 1. There is no concentration change with the Br2. So simply we are going to keep the values. E naught cell we have to calculate. What is the E naught? Okay, first of all we will calculate the E naught cell. Your E naught cell is equals to E naught of cathode minus E naught of your anode. E naught of the cathode, what is the cathode side? Br2. E naught is given to you. The reduction potential of Br2 to Br minus is 1.09 minus reduction potential of your hydrogen, which is by default your 0. So your E naught cell will be equal to your 1.09. Your E naught cell your E naught cell will be equal to 1.09. So keeping all the values of the respective thing in the equation, your E cell will be equal to your E cell will be equal to your E naught. What is the value of E naught? 1.09 minus 0.059 divided by n. How much electron transfer is there? Here we can see you are having 2 electron transfer. So n will be equal to your 2 log multiplied by the concentration of H plus. What is the concentration of H plus? H plus is given to you 0.030 whole square multiplied by the concentration of Br minus, which is equal to 0.010 whole square. Okay, we need to solve the question. 1.09 minus okay, so when you will solve the entire question with the help of the numerical part, what will be the value? You will get the value equal to your 1.28. okay, so on solving this, we are going to get the value which is equal to your 1.2882. Value comes here equal to 1.2882 volt, and it will be in your plus. So we can say that the reaction is your feasible. Okay. This is the numerical answer of your question number 14. Okay, moving towards the next question. Next question of the numerical part is your question number 15. Number 15, another numerical part. There you are given the rate constant of a reaction at 500 Kelvin and 700 Kelvin are 0.02 second inverse and 0.07 second inverse respectively. We have to calculate EA and A. Activation energy and Arrhenius constant we have to calculate. So to calculate this question, we need the we will have the equation log K2 upon K1 is equal to EA upon 2.303 R bracket 1 upon T1 minus 1 upon T2. So in this you are having two temperature, and corresponding to the temperature you should have the two constant K2 and K1. Okay, so if I am saying that T1 is my initial temperature, my first temperature, this one will be taken as my T1 and this for 700 as my T2. So respective to that, this will be my K1 and this will be my K2. keeping the values of K1 and K2 in the equation and the value of R is already given, we will solve the value for the EA. So putting the value log, what is the value for K2? It is 0.07 divided by value 0.02 is equal to EA divided by 2.303 multiplied by R. What is the value of R? 8.314. 1 upon, what is the temperature? T1, 1 upon 500 minus 1 upon 700. Okay, on solving this question, we will have the value of log. What will be the value of log? It will be 7 by 2, which is equal to EA upon 2.303 into 8.314. And on solving this, what will be there? 700 minus 500, dividing it by 500, multiply by your 700. On solving this, we will get the value of log. Using the log table, you can easily find out the value of log 7 by 2. And the value of EA will be equal to 2.303 into 8.314. Multiplying this, you will have multiply and then divide. Okay, then on cross multiplying and solving, you will get the value of EA, which is equal to your, using the KC, we will find out, you will have 18230. We will have 18230.8 joules. This is the value of your EA. Simply you have to put all the values in the equation. This is the main principal equation which we will use to solve the question. From here we are calculating the value of EA, and for the calculation of A we will use the equation. Which equation we will use? We will use the Arrhenius equation. K is equal to A e raised to power EA upon RT. For any specific temperature and K, we will have the value of A. For an example, I would like to take 500. I am just specifically taking the 500 as my temperature. So corresponding to that temperature, what is the value of my K? I am having 0.02. So the value of K I will keep 0.02 is equal to A e raised to power minus, what is the value of EA here? I am having 18230.8 joules divided by, what is the temperature I am being, sorry, what is the value of R here? 8.314 multiplied by temperature. At which temperature I am keeping this? At my 500 Kelvin temperature. So on solving the equation, on completely multiplying and dividing this, the value which I will get for the A will be equal to my 1.62, approximately 1.62 will be the answer of my A, which is my Arrhenius constant. For that also you have to use this equation. K is equals to A E minus EA upon RT. Okay. Okay, so students, moving to the last question of the section C, question number 22. In this, the question is given to you: 4 gram of benzoic acid dissolved in 50 gram of benzene shows a depression in freezing point equal to 1.62 Kelvin. Molar depression constant for the benzene is 4.9. You have to calculate the percentage association of acid if it forms a dimer. Okay, so what we have to do is we have to follow the formula del TF is equals to I KF into molality. So to find out the remaining things, first of all we have to find out the molality. What is molality? Molality is the weight of the solute divided by its molecular mass, multiplied by the weight of the solvent, and multiplying this by 1000. So how much weight is given to you? They have given you 4 grams, that is been dissolved in how much? What is the molecular mass of the benzoic acid? They are giving you 122, multiplied by weight of the solvent 50 and multiplying this by 1000. Okay, on solving this, how much, what will be the value? On solving this, we will get the value of the molarity, which is equal to your 0.6557. This is equal to your molarity. Okay, using the molarity, keeping all the remaining values, del TF is equals to I KF into molarity. Okay, del TF is given to you. What is the value of del TF? Okay, what is the value of del TF? Del TF is given to you. They have shown you a depression of 1.62, which is equal to I we don't know, we have to calculate. KF value is given to you, depression constant 4.9, multiplying by the molarity is given to you 0.6557. Putting the value in the respective places and on solving, we will get the value 0.6557. The value of I comes somewhere near to your 0.5, somewhere near to your 0.5042. Okay, so this is the value of your I. Now what you have to find is the percentage association of the acid. So we have to construct the equation regarding this. The equation will be C6H5COOH. This is getting dimer. They have specifically told you that it forms a dimer in the solution. So we will write the equation for the formation of dimer of the benzoic acid. So according to the equilibrium, what will be the statement? 1, 0, 1 minus alpha, it is going to give you alpha by 2. So I is equals to, what is I? I is the total number of ions after association, divide by before association. Okay, before, after upon before association. This is the formula we are using. Okay, so in this formula, using the formula, you can see how much is there after. After is 1 minus alpha plus alpha by 2. Divide by before this association. How much we have taken? It is 1. This is the condition for the before, and this is the condition for the after. This is the condition for the after. So total number after dissociation divide by total number of molecules before dissociation. Before we are taking it 1. So on solving, we will get 1 minus alpha by 2, which is equal to your I. So I, on solving, we are going to get 1 minus alpha by 2. What is the value of I? We have specifically found out here 0.5042 is equals to 1 minus alpha by 2. On replacing alpha by 2 is equals to 1 minus 0.5042. On solving this, we will get somewhere value equal to 0.49 or 0.495. will be the value of your alpha by 2. Therefore alpha is equal to how much you will get? 0.495 multiplied by 2, which is equal to 0.992. And they are asking you about the degree, the percentage. So to calculate the percentage, we will multiply the value of alpha by 100. Therefore in this much of place I can tell you, therefore percentage of association is equal to alpha multiplied by 100, which is equal to your 0.922 multiplied by 100, which is equal to 99.2%. So this is their final answer, which tells you regarding the how much percentage of association of acid will take place. That's all, students. This was the last numerical part from the section number 2. Thank you everyone.